Hello, everybody. Welcome to Leap to Capability, a learning session series. In this session, we will talk about what are the preparations we need to do before attending an interview. So some of the key aspects that one has to remember is when you're attending an interview, the starting point is be yourself. Whatever could be your qualification, your age, your background, doesn't matter. Just be yourself and be positive. Having that positive mindset is very important. I'm sure you keep hearing this a lot. What it essentially means is don't worry about, oh, will I get this job? There are so many other candidates attending. Those kinds of thoughts will pull your mindset down to a negative level. And once you're positive, naturally your confidence level is built. That's how you will be confident. And then having a clarity of thought in any topic that you are aware of. Be very clear about the understanding of the topic or a concept, or even in terms of about your own future plans, etc. And lastly, remember, any interview is an opportunity to create the first impression. So the person or the people who are interviewing you are creating those first impressions about yourself. So that is the key factor. So these are some of the key aspects you have to keep in mind before we get into the details. So what are the key factors? So it is about presenting yourself, the knowledge or the skills that you bring to the table, the articulation, how well you can articulate any topic or any concept. What is the attitude that you have? We briefly spoke about it, the positive attitude, and then what are your future plans? So we'll go into the details of each one of them. When we say presenting yourself, we're largely referring to your physical appearance. And this is also important in the context of video conference meetings. Nowadays, there could be more of video conference interactions that are happening with less of physical meetings. Even in that scenario, you cannot ignore this. And when we say physical appearance, it is not about how good you look, right? Whatever are your natural looks, that's the way you are. So it is not about that. So then what are those? Firstly, the formal clothing. So for every interview, remember to wear or present yourself in a formal clothing, and it is situation dependent. Now, I'm not suggesting here, say for men, tie and a coat in all scenarios. Maybe some companies have that kind of dress code. Then you may want to go in that kind of dress code. But otherwise, a simple formal shirt and a trouser. And when it comes to women, in Indian context, you can think of kurta, salwar, kameez. There are some formal ones, not those fancy ones that you would wear. Even sari for that matter. Unfortunately, sari has a different mindset. But believe me, I have seen so many successful senior women who carry themselves so well in saris and attend meetings and even go to office regularly in saris. So don't have any what should I say, mindsets on that kind of clothing. So essentially, it's all about the formal clothing that you wear. Don't wear t-shirts or jeans and round necks, for sure not. Now, some organizations may have that kind of informal culture, so that is fine. But still, when you're making your first appearance, have your bare minimum formal clothing. Grooming well. How well you groom your hair, it makes so important. You shouldn't look like as though you just got up from the bed and walked into the interview. It gives that nice pleasant feel, right? And for men, shaving, if you're growing a beard, trimming the beard very well, it makes a lot of difference. These are small things that gives if I can use the word, a shabby look, and trust me, that will lead to the formation of your first impressions. And likewise for women, the tidiness of the hair and so on. And then well-polished shoes. Okay, this may not be relevant when you're talking about video conferencing, but when you're meeting in person, generally people think, oh, who would be looking at my shoes, right? They're looking at me, why down? But believe me, in a 30, 40 minutes or even a 60 minutes of interaction, people will look at your shoes few times. And that will also carry the impression. So a simple, well-polished formal shoes Again, don't wear sneakers. Sneakers on a formal clothing may look odd. I'm not talking about matching of black shoes, gray shoes. So that's a different aspect. At least, a good looking one. And please don't wear a torn shoes. That gives a very bad impression. Just avoid that. And have a good night's sleep, the previous night. You may wonder, how is this important? Believe me, if I'm sure you would have experienced this for yourself and you would have seen your other friends and colleagues. If you do not have a good night's sleep, you can see the tiredness in the face, right? And with that tiredness, even with the best clothing you wear and the best grooming you do, it reflects in your eyes, and that will show that either you're tired or lack of confidence. It can lead to some other perceptions by the people who are interviewing you. So have a good night's sleep so that you're fresh and pleasant. Have a smile. You may have to practice this. For some, it comes naturally. We say, oh, he or she has such a smiling face. Some it may not. So just adopt it. Don't get into a laughing mode. There's a difference between a smile and a laugh. Sometimes people confuse. I'm not suggesting you keep laughing for everything. So then people will misunderstand you. Have a simple, nice, pleasant smile. And lastly, maintain a good eye contact. And that's very important. And particularly if there are more than one interviewer, look at all of them, right? Don't keep looking at only one person. So the other people will think, you're not talking to them. And mind you, I want to draw the difference between maintaining an eye contact and staring, right? There's a difference between the two. I'm not getting into those details. We can cover in some other session on communication skills when we can talk about. But a very simple, casual eye contact is very important. That shows you're confident. On and off, you may look here and there. You may look up, look down when you're talking or when you're thinking. That's absolutely fine. But if most of the time you're not looking at the people and looking elsewhere, it will be perceived as lack of confidence and you're being nervous, right? So these are the key elements of presenting yourself. Then comes knowledge and skills. Firstly, I want to start with a question. So do you think there's a difference between knowledge and skills? Are they the same words with similar meaning? Or if there is difference, what is the difference? What I suggest is all of you to pause the video here and think for a few minutes and make your own notes, right? In terms of what is the difference between, if there is a difference, you think, what is the difference between knowledge and a skill? Okay, I hope you would have made some notes. So knowledge is about a theoretical understanding of any concept or a topic. Now, how do you gain knowledge? By reading books, by attending courses, by way of your schools and college, by talking to people, by hearing someone. So there are many ways you gain the knowledge. It's all about getting that theoretical understanding. Skills is the ability to apply on the job, or basically to put to practice. So I'll give a very simple example. Hopefully we can all relate to it. If I say I have the knowledge of driving a car. Now, how to drive a car? You start the car, you press the clutch, shift the gear to the gear 1, release the clutch, press the accelerator, and so on, right? And as the speed increases, change to gear 2, gear 3. So I can explain in a very great level of detail how to drive a car. Now, the question is, can I actually drive a car? Now, that is a skill. Knowing how to drive and explaining how to drive a car is the knowledge aspect. But if someone gives me a key and says, drive this car, now that is a demonstration of the skill. So this is the difference between knowledge and skill. And this way you can apply to every topic, even with your own technical background. And in an interview, you should always highlight your knowledge. Again, there's a very thin line of difference between highlighting and boasting too much. Don't add too many adjectives. I am the best and I know everything. Try to minimize those things. But proudly highlighting your knowledge is very well acceptable, and there's nothing wrong in that, right? Whatever you know. So talk about it proudly and confidently. Now, freshers who attend the interviews, and when I use the word freshers, either it could be right after the college, attending your interviews for job, or even within first 2 to 3 years maximum of your experience, the higher prominence is given to the knowledge that you have by way of your qualification and so on. But as your experience increases, let's say you're attending an interview after 7 years of job experience or 10 or 12 years, then no doubt knowledge is considered, rather that is taken for granted. It's assumed that you already know things. Then the next level of importance is given to what is the skills that you have. In the sense, with whatever knowledge you have gained, how did you apply in the job in the last 7, 10, 12 years? And what benefits that you deliver to the organization? So the conversation goes in that direction. So that is where you talk about the skills. And this becomes more important as you grow in the career. And lastly, before you attend any job interview, understand the role that you have applied for. What is the job role? What is the job title in the first place? And what are the roles and responsibilities? Get some basic information about the organization. Nowadays, everything is on the net, or you may have a friend who's working or some friend who worked in the past. So gather some knowledge about the organization and a good understanding about the role. Even if it is a walk-in interview, the word walk-in interview sometimes is misleading. The interview process is walk-in, right? But you are not just walking in. You got to prepare yourself quite well there. Next is about clear articulation. Firstly, what is articulation? Articulation is the ability to clearly explain your thoughts or anything that you know of, right? Now, I may have lots of information, I may have lots of knowledge, but if I'm unable to explain it properly to others, or in other words, if I'm unable to articulate it well, then it is of no use. Now, I may proudly say, oh, these people are not understanding what I'm saying. My intellectual standards are way too high. Maybe that's one way of looking at it. But then if there is a reason or a situation that you have to explain to somebody, then you have to find how to explain to those people. If they may not be so intellectually advanced as you are, but if you have to explain to them, you have to explain so that they understand you well. Otherwise, what's the use? That knowledge that you have is of no use when others are unable to understand, or if you're not able to convey any concept or a topic, right? And answer to the point. Now, in any interview, this is like the vivas that we all have gone through in colleges. Whatever is a question asked, answer to the point. Maybe you can explain a little more. Don't keep on explaining more and more. So there are some people who think if I explain more and more, I'm impressing them. Believe me, you're not. Rather, you may be putting them off, or sometimes some of the interviews may get even irritated. So be cautious of that. So answer to the point and don't go too much beyond the topic. And give pauses. Whenever you are explaining something which is going on for several minutes, at some logical point, give that small 2-3 seconds pause. Believe me, that makes a lot of difference. And that also gives you time to see whether they are showing interest in the explanation or not, right? You can make out by their facial expressions. And this is also you gain by experience and by practice of several years. So that small 2-3 seconds gap, if they think that you're deviating too much, at least it will give them an opportunity to stop you, right? So just don't keep on talking continuously non-stop. Give some pauses in between. Then comes the attitude. Now, the key mantra for hiring, is hire for good attitude. Your knowledge and skills can be taught. Now, I'm not suggesting here that if you don't have enough knowledge or skills, you will still be hired because I have a great attitude. Yes, but in comparative terms, you never know who are the other candidates who are attending interview, right? They could have the same attitude as you are and much more knowledgeable or more having more skills. So this is not in the comparative terms, but if given a situation, I have a good level of knowledge, but my attitude is poor, then you may not be hired, right? But on the contrary, I have a very good attitude, I have the willingness to learn, and the way I present myself, and they think that yes, this person may not know everything, but he or she can be taught. So that's what I'm trying to highlight. And if you do not know anything, admit it, right? Nobody will expect you to know everything. Impossible. Nobody will know everything, right? If you do not know something, say it up openly that, okay, this particular topic, I do not know enough, or I don't have the background, but don't bluff. Out of 10 questions, if you have answered 6 or 7 very well, and if you have bluffed on 1 or 2, it is that one or two questions that you have bluffed will take precedence. So they will conclude that, oh, this person does not have good attitude, so he or she is bluffing. So that overrides the other 6, 7 things that you've answered. So don't bluff. You people are smart enough to catch you. And recognize and respect the knowledge and skills. And rather, this is a point for everybody, right? As a person giving interview, as a person taking interview, later on when you're working and the job, when you're interacting with colleagues, this applies in all scenarios. Don't be biased. So the key point here I want to make is don't be biased by way of their background, age, any region, and so on, right? Recognize and acknowledge and respect for the knowledge they bring to the table, the skills they bring to the table. Then comes your future goals and plans. So before you attend any interview, you have to have a clarity on what you want to become or what you want to be in the next 3 to 5 years. And I just gave a 3 to 5 years as a horizon of indication. It need not be exactly. You may just say, oh, in the next 1 to 2 years, I want to be at, or I want to achieve some milestone. So that's fine. And don't worry, doesn't have to be perfect. You may say that, okay, this is what I want to be, but I'm not too sure, I need more guidance. That will also be appreciated. So you don't have to think that, oh, my future plans are not perfect or they're not so fancy. Doesn't matter. The fact that you're thinking about it and saying that, okay, in the next few years, this is what I want to be. Or in some cases, you may go few steps ahead and say in the next 10, 20 years, I want to be this. Wow, that's great. So that means you're thinking so ahead. So at least that part may not be expected, but at least you should have a clarity for your immediate future. And whatever you have formulated your plans or the thoughts, it should be aligned to either your qualification or the knowledge or skills that you possess, or lastly, your interest. There has to be some rationale with regards to their future plans to any of these factors. It cannot be something totally out of the blue. Then the question is, okay, why do you want to do that? My qualification and knowledge is in one area, I want to do something else. If there is no alignment, that will not be convincing, right? So you have to be clear that it has to align with something or the other. Now, whatever you intend to become or you want to become few years down the line, surely you do not have all the necessary knowledge or skills today, right? If you have all of them today, the question is, why can't you become today, right? So there will be some gap. So you need to be aware of what those gaps are. If you're not aware, no problem. That also will be a point that I would like to interact with seniors and other colleagues to understand what are those additional knowledges and skills I need to attain so that I can reach my goal in the next 3 years, 5 years, and so on. Having this kind of thought process, and this is a part of the attitude angle, right, will convince people that yes, you are so positive and you have that outlook of long-term thinking. So I know what I want to be, but I may not know what are the additional skills and knowledge I need to possess. No problem. But at least I know that I will talk to people, right? And this is where the role of a mentor comes into picture. Maybe that's a topic for another day. And they will guide you what are those additional knowledge and skills you need to possess. Lastly, if you have to summarize some of the key factors that you need to be prepared for before attending an interview, first and foremost, understand the role very clearly that you have applied for. So don't just walk into any job interview role. Sometimes due to the situation, some desperation may drive you to do a few things, but try to minimize that, right? So see the alignment with your qualification and your knowledge to the role. Gather some basic information about the organization. As I said, it's all there out on the net, or talk to some people who have worked in that organization in the past, or somebody who knows about the organization. They may not have worked, but they know. So gather some information about the organization so that you can relate to that and little more specific in your explanation. Prepare a simple 3 to 5 minute summary about yourself, because typically most interviews start with the process of, okay, can you explain briefly about yourself? And when we say about yourself, it's all about your professional experience, your qualification, what are your future plans, those sorts of things. And if you have already worked for a few years, what were some of the areas that you worked and what are some of the achievements? Very quickly at a very high level, not more than 3 to 5 minutes. And you have to practice this several times just by yourself. And identify certain strengths and areas of improvement. And strengths, this can be technical or this can be soft skills as well. Doesn't matter, either of those areas. So identify those and keep them ready. Depending on the question you may ask, you don't have to say upfront, oh, these are my strengths. As I said, answer to the point. If a question is asked, only then you answer, but you have to be prepared. You cannot be thinking at that moment. And lastly, what value you bring to the table in relation to the role. Now, whether you get hired, whether there are somebody else who are better than you, now you can't think about it, right? So don't bother about it. So the point here is, with my knowledge, with my skills, and with my background, what is the value I bring to the table, right? And why should they hire me? So I need to be able to articulate that well. So with this, I conclude this session. So if I had to wrap up, as I presented in the first slide, be yourself, have a positive attitude that brings you the confidence when you're attending the interview, have a clarity of thought in every aspect that you talk about. And lastly, remember that this is a platform where you're creating the first impression, with the people who is taking your interview. And with that, I wish you all the best. Whenever you're attending interviews, you will be attending lots of interviews in the coming years. So do your best. And this is a continuous process. Believe me, today you attend an interview, you feel you have not done best, and that's how you learn, right? A lot of people keep learning even after 10, 20 years of experience. It's a never-ending process. And I would like to re-emphasize my quote, have the mindset of a student, because this is what is important to keep your learning process active. And do subscribe to this YouTube channel. And lastly, if you have any questions, any queries, any help you need, write to learn2capability@gmail.com. Thank you.